Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited, as I usually am, for my guest in the episode today. His name is Ben Chi, and he works with the LA Football Club, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, is actually soccer here in America. And I'm so excited to have him on because he's had such an interesting career to get to this point. And I'm excited for him to talk about what that progression is and how he got there and what that's going to look like. But a couple of things that he's done that I want to make sure that I point out. He's worked as a content distributor, a project manager. He's worked as a marketing associate, a marketing director, and now he's the manager for merchandise and brand and community for the LA Football Club. And I'm just so excited for him to share that journey. And one of the things that I do want to point out about your story is that you went from high school straight into career and working and heading down this path. And I think that's really awesome for people who are on the same path and might not want to go to college, which is becoming a very common thing these days. And so I'm excited to hear about your journey through that process and getting the positions that you've had. And welcome, Ben. I'm so happy to have you here today.
No, thank you so much. Excited to be here. I do want to put out a disclaimer that my chair is extremely squeaky and I'm not the most stay still person. I can be a little bit restless. So apologize to anybody listening about the squeakiness.
That's all right. That's all
Yeah.
right. We forgive you for the squeaky chair. It happens. I have video and audio with my dog trying to dig a hole in our carpet. So
Well,
it's totally okay.
at least that's endearing. I don't know how much more of this squeaking thing I can take. I'm gonna try to
It's
stay as still
okay.
as possible.
Okay, Ben, let's start with your current position with the LA Football Club. What do you do there? What are some of your main responsibilities?
I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. I think being that we're still relatively new and a very young organization, I think naturally we wear a lot of hats when something like that happens. But my main focal point currently with my position is in merchandise. Anything front facing as a brand that's on apparel, whether it be our jerseys, down to koozies, flags, training wear, all of those things. It kind of comes across my desk, so to say. Work closely with the league, and I work closely with our kit supplier, which is Adidas. And then it's all about kind of maintaining our brand integrity and what we actually want to achieve as not only as a club and as a team, but more so as a brand that's growing its identity.
Nice, nice. Okay, now one question that I have based on what I read about your position also, how has COVID impacted what you're doing specifically? Has there been a big impact there, or have you guys been able to adjust through that?
Um, I think we definitely had to adjust. I think everybody has had to adjust to the current times right now. I think in terms of merchandise, I think we're a little fortunate that fashion happens to work so much further out than and it's scheduled far in advance than something that's on a day to day. Of course, there are things that are more reactionary, but fashion is usually booked a year in advance, especially for something big as like a jersey or training wear and things of that kind of nature. So we've just been uh, kind of going along with the calendar that we've already had in plan. But of course, the things that have kind of suffered the most is, the releases. Our fans are extremely passionate and they're stylish and they're creative and they're very expressive in the way that they like to kind of put things together in terms of what they wear. So we haven't really been able to kind of be in touch with them by having like launch events or little pop-ups
Mhm.
or things of that kind of nature. And we've been keeping a lot of it digital, but I would have to say that the biggest transition just has been we haven't really been able to see each other and really have that energy and community and excitement together. And I think especially from a sports organization standpoint, selling things like jerseys or training wear, there's a lot of emotion tied to those things. So you
Mhm.
go to a game with a kid and it's their first time, you want to buy them a jersey. You win and you want to remember the game by buying something that commemorates that, and you're taking a lot of the emotional aspect out of merchandise, which does kind of hurt in terms of sports apparel and fan gear.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have to tell you. Okay, first of all, soccer's not really my thing,
Hmm.
but I'm a Lakers fan because I'm from Southern California, so
Right.
just born and raised there. And I have a jersey that I got back in high school, which now a friend of mine reminded me has been 20 years since I've been there. But it was when Kobe had number 8. It was when he first
Oh wow.
came out. I started following his career. I mean, right when he got to the Lakers, my dad and I followed his career, and
Mm,
I still have that jersey to
right.
this day because there is an emotional attachment
Of course.
to that. And so I totally understand that. And it's so awful. I mean, this is one of those I, I mean, we all know sports was impacted significantly. My poor husband is like, what do I watch now? There's like nothing on. And we're watching like reruns of games and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But this is kind of that next level of it's not just the game, it's not just physically going to the game, but there are other avenues that these sports clubs utilize for, to make money essentially, and apparel is one of them. And I love hearing though that you have a fan base that's really creative and enjoys, the jerseys and all that. I think that's really great that you guys have cultivated that already when it is such a young club. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think our goal as, not only as a brand or a sports team, but just as, an organization that brings the community together. I think we often have to kind of look at things that the community is interested in. We have to be able to represent the community correctly. I think that being that we're from a global city like Los Angeles that has such a strong, diverse community of creatives and people that like to express themselves, and there's everybody has a story here in LA, right? I mean, everybody has a
Mhm.
story everywhere, but I think there's a lot of different stories that are waiting to be told, and we definitely like to kind of tap into that in terms of not only merchandise, but being able to highlight and spotlight some of the DIY things that people love to do, whether it's like pins and patches and making your own jackets, and those are all kind of things that really you know accentuate your own personality and your ability to express yourself. And I think clothing has a very unique way of giving you power. You wear a suit to an interview, or
Mhm.
you wear a certain dress to a certain occasion, or you wear certain brands, and it feels empowering. It gives you confidence, it gives you a sense of identity a lot of times. And I think that you know it just so happens to be fortunate that we have a fan base that's not shy about those things.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. I love that. We have a soccer team here. I'm in like Salt Lake City, Utah area.
Oh, okay.
And Real Salt Lake is here. They're
Yeah.
just down the road from where we are. And excuse me, we don't have a lot of, well, there are only professional sports team here in
Yeah.
Utah. Well, we have the Jazz. We have the
Jazz.
Jazz
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a big deal here. Like
Yeah.
soccer is a big deal here in a way that I didn't experience growing up.
Right.
Growing up in the LA area, it was more about basketball, football than it was soccer. So it's interesting to now be in a soccer community. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
for
fun.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I want to talk about your career path and some of these transitions that you have. So can you tell me about a couple of poignant transitions that you've had in your career that got you to this point with the LA Football Club?
I think I'm gonna probably have to kind of recall as I talk about it. I think one of the biggest points where I've kind of taken a turn, and it sure didn't feel like that at that time, right? And I think that that's one of the funny things about life is that some of the decisions that you make that you may feel like is really significant may sometimes be very small, and some of the small decisions that you make in life can be something very significant. I was, like you said, fresh out of high school, and I just went right to work. I grew up with a single mom, and I thought that the best way for me to get ahead is not necessarily going to get another series of education. For me, I just kind of felt like, okay, let me try going into the workforce, making money, and I did whatever it was, like whether it's working at a video store or working at a cell phone store, office jobs, countless amount of things. I've done it, you know. And there came a point in time where I felt like my employers weren't getting what they wanted from me, although they saw the potential in what I can offer them through my
Mm.
personality and my characteristics, just because my personality isn't something isn't one where I could pour myself and really devote myself unless it's something that I'm actually really passionate and really believe in. So I came to a point where one day I was on Facebook, and my friend had put up like my really close friend had put up like this wanted ad, like, oh hey, you know, I'm working for this new company that's a digital marketing, a social media agency. I didn't even know what social media was at that time. I didn't know that Facebook was social media, you know. I just, you know, and he said
Back
that they,
before we grew, we didn't grow up with these things
yeah,
like the kids are now.
exactly. I mean, I don't want to be too telling about my age, but like, you know, there was Friendster and MySpace,
Yes.
and you know, where you had to write testimonials about each other.
Yep.
And now it's like you just press a heart, and that validates who you are as a person.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, so we had I had saw that wanted sign, and honestly at that time I was kind of at a stable job. It was something that I wasn't really passionate about, but it was something that offered me, like, you know, benefits, you know, a steady
Mhm.
paycheck, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of had like this like continuous like scratching inside of me, where like it was kind of knocking at my door, like, okay, hey, like you're not happy, you know that you're not going to be able to give yourself to this, you know, you have a hard time waking up and going to work every day, you know. And I kind of made a conscious decision to kind of say, all right, you know what, um and you know, everybody that's young does this, like, oh my god, I'm so old, like this is the last risk that I'm going to take. I'm going to take this risk and go work for this place that pays like, I don't know, like $10 an hour, which, you know, isn't bad, but just at that time it was a downgrade from where I was at. So I was like, okay, i'm going to go I'm going to go work there, and if it doesn't work out, then I'm just going to shut up and suck it up and just go work at a job that's just going to pay the bills and stay safe until I'm however old I am. And that's what happened. I went to go work there, and it opened my eyes up to a whole new chapter, and a whole new side of myself that I didn't know was there. I mean, I knew that I loved creativity, I loved creating things, I love, you know, thinking of ideas, you know, and you know, being able to express myself and really be able to connect with people in terms of communication. But I never really knew that there was a way that you can monetize that. I didn't know that, you know, you could come up with campaigns and strategies for small businesses through Facebook posts and Twitter ads, or, you know, Yelp reviews and such like that. And I didn't know that any of these things really existed as a business. I always thought of it from only a consumer standpoint, where, oh, I'm going to make a Facebook post because I'm doing something cool, or I'm going to put up a photo of my food because I really think it looks good and it tastes good. But I never thought that that in turn would influence other people to go out and buy it, or to go out and feel like they missed out. And yeah, I mean, that was one of the moments that kind of got that started. And I
Okay.
think, yeah.
Okay. I have to jump in. Okay. So one of the things that I love about what you're saying is
Sure.
sometimes you have to take that risk. Sometimes you have to go, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't even know if I can do this job.
Yeah.
But taking that risk, I think that opens our eyes to so many different opportunities and skill sets, exactly what you're describing. And I used to work in higher education. So I worked for a period of time, I worked primarily with like freshmen to sophomores, so
Mm,
18 to like 22-year-olds,
okay.
which was probably about this time for you that you were going through this. And they come to me senior year and they're like, I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, go try something. Go talk to somebody. Just go do something, volunteer. I don't care. Just go do something.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to do. It doesn't even matter at this point. If you don't have any kind of like drive for something,
Right.
just go do something, because you will learn very quickly what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
And you'll be able to apply that to the next position and the next position. And eventually you'll end up, for the most part, it depends on your goals, but for the most part, you'll find that sweet spot of, I'm really good at this, and there's a company that will hire me to do this.
Yeah.
And it all magically works out. So I just wanted to point that out, because I think that's not an uncommon story for
Yeah.
people who are in their 20s, just
Yeah,
across
absolutely.
the board, regardless of what your path is. And I think it's great for you to share that and talk about like taking a risk and it paying off for you. So I just had to point that out.
Yeah. No, it's I guess it's worked out for me so far.
Okay, so other transitions that you've had, because I know that wasn't the only one.
Yeah. So I mean I was working with that company for about 2 years. I was pretty much in charge of all of the campaigns that we were running socially. And some things didn't really work out from the company's standpoint. I think they were, pumping a lot more money into it than they expected to. And I think
Mm,
social media advertising and really monetizing from social media standpoint was still relatively new to a lot of small businesses. I think it wasn't the force that it was right now. I
mm,
think we were still a little ahead of the curve in the sense where we were trying to explain to businesses of the impact it could have. And I think a lot of small businesses, when they're putting money into this, they were thinking that it was going to be like a magic wand where like, you know, oh, I hired somebody for social media and they're going to help me out. And next week there's going to be a line out the door trying to buy my product or try my food or something. And, it just took a little bit more time. And I think that, I think businesses were just kind of still waiting, and we kind of had like, I think as a country we had like a little bit of a tough time during a certain eras where
mm,
social media was always also kind of booming. So that
right.
didn't work out, and in like I had felt that coming a little bit, and I saw another opening for a brand that I kind of grew up admiring in the streetwear world. And I thought to myself, okay, I learned how to be creative, come up with these campaigns, and kind of seeing the effect of how social media moves with something. Why not go and try it for something that has a following right now that's transitioning into that phase as well too. Um, and I the position was an internship, and I looked at myself, and I think I was 24 at that time or 25, and I just told myself like, wow, dude, you have got to be the oldest intern in the world if you actually really take this job. And I went from like a okay paying job to a job that pretty much paid me nothing.
Oh no.
Um, And I had to tell myself once again, I said, hey, look, you know what? You're going to take this one last risk. You're going to take this one last chance. And if this doesn't work out, you're for sure going to go work for an office job and push pencils. And I took the internship. I was the oldest intern probably in the brand's history. I did everything from whether it's fetching coffee to staying up and driving to Vegas at 4 in the morning for a trade show. I would set up trade shows from 6 in the morning while my bosses were out getting drunk and having crazy parties. I would set up lookbook shoots. I would steam and lint roll all the clothes before photo shoots. I did whatever they wanted me to do, and I stayed there for about 2.5 years doing that, getting paid. I'm not allowed to curse, so I got paid dog doo doo. Um, to do that for 2.5 years. And it's actually really funny because soccer has always been something that I've been passionate about.
Mm,
And I always thought to myself, like you had mentioned, like, what am I going to do? What is all this marketing, all this creativity? What is this going to achieve? And I always been in a position where I said, man, I would love to work for a soccer team. And something that stands out from what you said to me earlier on during the conversation was like, oh, like it means you can only be a player. And that's what I thought. I exactly thought if you're going to work for a soccer team, the only way you'd be able to work there is if you're a player or if you're a coach or if you're working as a technical staff assistant or something of that kind of nature. But luckily, I was at an event that I was invited to because people in the streetwear industry knew that I liked soccer, and I was invited to a soccer tournament that that a streetwear brand had put on, and there I met a guy uh, that came up to me and was like, "Hey, you know, you are like you're into. It seems like you're into fashion. You're wearing a soccer jersey. Can we put you up on a blog on a website that we have that intersects the world of art, music, fashion with soccer?" And then I was like, I don't like photos or like I'm not a selfie king or anything like that. So I was kind of hesitant, but he was like, "Hey, like, you know, we won't put your face on it or whatever." So I was like, "Okay." So he takes a picture of my outfit and then he puts it up. And as soon as he leaves, it kind of then resonates with me that who he's trying to talk to and who he's trying to connect with is someone like me. So then I had asked him like, "Hey, you know, I have this background in marketing, small businesses, now streetwear brand fashion and all that kind of stuff. I would love to get, you know, invited to see if there's ever a potential opportunity we could work together." And then he said, "Wow, it's like funny that you say that. We just got commissioned from the U.S. Men's national team to do a fan fest in San Antonio for their game against Mexico, which was a huge rivalry." So, and he was like, "Hey, you know, all the budget and everything is already, you know, accounted for. So I can't really pay for you to do this job, and you'd have to pay for your own airplane ticket out there. But I would love to see if this project works out with us, and if it does, then we'll kind of move forward." So I told myself, I sat there and said, "Dude, you know what? This is the last time I'm gonna take this risk. Like, this is the last time."
Famous
Like,
last words, like the fourth time now.
yeah. I was like, "Dude, if this doesn't work out, and the only reason why I'm doing this is because it's soccer, like, you know, you love it, like, you got to go after it. This is the only time." So I quit my job, and I had the little bit of leftover dog doo doo that they gave me. I spent it. I spent my last couple $100s that I had from my paycheck with not much in my bank account. I bought a plane ticket to San Antonio on my own. I went there, and you know, fast forward, and everything worked out. The fan fest went well. They were really really happy, and I got to keep working with this website blog that turned into an agency, and I met my boss that I have now at LAFC through this job, and we stayed in touch, and that's how I was able to get my job at LAFC. So I would say, you know, all the gambles and the risks that I've taken kind of brought me to where I'm at right now.
Oh my goodness. This feels like a movie. Like
I,
I
I,
feel like I've seen this before in in a movie or a TV show. That's awesome.
no, I mean, look, I think it's an occupational hazard. My job is in marketing, so maybe I'm just packaging it a little bit better than it was, but it's definitely not a movie.
No,
Yeah,
here's what I like though. And this is part of why I'm glad that I brought you on, because you went for the hustle, but you did it in a really strategic and smart way, even if you weren't sure if that's what was happening at the time. I think it was this great combination of I'm going to follow what I'm passionate about, because you said in the beginning, right? Like, I want to do something that I care about,
right.
and spoken like a true artist. I totally get that. And it's led you down this path. And one thing I really want to point out too, for people who are listening, because this applies across all sectors, all types of careers. You have to talk to people,
Mm,
and you have to be able to talk about yourself in such a way that somebody goes, "I kind of want to work with you.
mm.
I think this could be a good a good thing," and our kind of term for it is the 30-second elevator pitch,
Yeah,
but you just have to be able to talk about yourself and talk about what you've done in a really succinct way, and talk about your passion. And from the story that you told, you were able to do that really well at an event that you happened to be at.
yeah.
Right. And I think, especially LA, I feel like that's such an LA thing to have happen.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm not gonna
Like,
lie. Yeah, it is.
that's not necessarily going to happen in like small town America, but in LA, but that's part of the opportunity, right? And that's one of the things, because I used to work in the LA area, and I would tell people all the time, there is a level of opportunity here that most people don't understand because they don't necessarily put themselves out there
Mm,
in such a way that they become known or they get to meet somebody, because you never know. You never know who you're going to run into at any point of the day in that area.
right.
And B, like, you don't know who somebody else knows.
Yeah.
And so being able to have some of that language, and you might not have even been prepared to talk about it,
Yeah.
but still being able to just on the spot go, there could be an opportunity here. Let's just go for it. Sometimes that's when the best conversation happens versus being in a more forced networking situation.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely agree with that. I believe that people have their own energy and auras, and I think that, naturally we're very instinctive, creatures, and we can kind of feel certain things in the way that they shift. And I think it's about us kind of listening to that intuition, so to say. I think, um, I, you know, it just so happens that I gotten fortunate enough to be placed in those situations to have those conversations. But I think one of the things that really helped is that whoever I was speaking to was able to feel how genuine I was in terms of what I was passionate about and what I actually really wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I think also, a lot of people have, a reluctancy to ask people for help. But I think, in human beings are just naturally selfish and very self-centered. So I think when human beings feel utilized, I think that that's when a lot of people find value or worth in themselves. And so I think when you ask somebody for help, although the help might not be to the extent or the degree or what you wanted, I think, you know, people love to help people, I think, naturally, or so I would like to believe in. Whether it's asking for directions or asking somebody, hey, are there any good restaurants around here when you're traveling? Whatever it may be, I feel like genuinely people might take time out of their day to help you, and some may not. But it's definitely worth the try if it's something that you want to really explore.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know the guests that I've had on the podcast up to this point, and I'm sure it will continue, they have all had that spirit.
Mm,
They have all said, connect with me on LinkedIn or email me here. And it's been very, they're willing to help. They want to help people get to where they want to go. They want to be a connection if they
yeah,
can. So I absolutely agree with you. And you're going to have people out there that are like, I don't really care. I'm not going to help you. But
yeah,
those
yeah,
aren't
for
the
sure.
people that you're going to want to communicate with anyway, because
Yeah,
that's the negative energy.
yeah,
And you're not going to want to work for that person. And you're
right,
probably not even going to want to be in their network because they're likely going to be around people who are also like that. And
yeah.
that's not great. Okay, so I feel like you've had such an interesting career and transition that in some ways just happened to you.
Yeah.
But what are some pieces of advice that you would give people who are trying to advance in their career and maybe find themselves in a similar position that you were in when you were like, I know I want something more, what would you tell people?
I think I have a lot of things that I need to figure out for myself before giving out advice. But I think if I think about what I think I would have, maybe some of my regrets as a lesson for myself. I think one is I wish that I was a little bit more honest with myself about what I wanted before, uh, because I feel like I've wasted a lot of time. Like I think me not going to college might have given me a head start in a very short term way of being financially a little bit better, and maybe I'm not in as much as debt as a student might be that came out of college. But I think I missed out on the opportunity to be real with myself and say, I don't know what I want to do. I think it took
Mm.
me, I had a lot of distractions that were like, oh, I like making money. Who doesn't like making money? This is okay. And then it made me go down a path that I didn't necessarily need to go down to kind of figure out like, oh, you know what? I won't be happy, you know, unless I'm doing what I like. And I don't think that that's a thought that's going to cross for everybody. I think that there are people
Mm.
that are genuinely okay with doing something that doesn't stimulate them in a creative way, and that's okay. I
Mhm.
don't think that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone needs to be a photographer. Not everyone needs to be an artist of any sort. I think you should be what you want to be, but just be very honest about that as early as possible. Um,
Yes. Thank you for saying that, by the way, because there there is such a culture out there right now that I'm seeing, and I don't know if it's because I technically fall into the entrepreneur part because I own my own business now, or if legitimately everybody is seeing this, but this, you need to own your own business, you need to do this, you need to do that, and don't work for the man, don't do this. And I am actually an advocate of the 9 to 5, like
yeah,
as somebody who
yeah.
like
I totally understand why. Yeah,
as somebody who now owns their own business and I've built this thing up by myself,
yeah,
like I do everything that you see in my business, I do.
yeah,
Like I don't outsource anything, I don't do any of that. And so knowing how much work that took,
yeah,
I'm like, I do not recommend this for most people.
yeah,
Like, get your health insurance,
yeah,
get your 401k,
yeah,
like get that steady paycheck
yeah,
because there is a benefit to stability. If that's something that you value,
yeah,
financial stability, which a lot of people value,
yep,
there's nothing wrong with that.
absolutely,
And this whole culture of I have to own my own business or I
yep,
have to turn my hobby into a business.
yeah,
I have to sell this, I have to do that. You do not have to do anything.
yeah. I 100% agree with that. I think it's really tough because it seems like, with, and regrettably, I mean, we all add to this to this trait that I think this culture has shifted into, is that, we love sharing the finished product, but we rarely ever share the journey on how it gets done. So, when you see things on Instagram and, maybe somebody started a brand or somebody started a company or a restaurant, and, 3 months later, you don't even realize that 3 months have passed. And all of a sudden, it seems like they're so much more successful than they were when they first started.
Mhm.
And it makes you think like, oh, you know what, like, and it's good, right? It's good in a sense where it seems like things are possible. You're getting to share the fact that there's possibilities and potentials in all of these
Mhm.
opportunities that you can take for yourself. It encourages you to dream. It encourages you to go out there and be courageous. But in another sense, if you dive too much into that as it's as a isolated situation where you're only looking at the finished product, then yes, you're going to miss out on the journey. And I don't think people realize how difficult it is, where if you run your own business, every other week feels like you have to pay a vendor, or every day feels like you have to pay somebody's paycheck. And every day feels like my business is going to shut down if this check doesn't come in from here. Or,
Yes.
like, there's a lot of different things to that people don't realize. Like, we as employees, it's so easy for us to say, well, why can't they just give us a raise? It's only, a couple $100. Or like, oh, why didn't they just put more money into this? But, in an overarching standpoint of looking at a holistic picture, which is something that a business owner does or a boss
Mhm.
does or whatever, um, I guarantee you they pay the price. And you want, not to be cliche, when you pay the cost to be the boss, those are coming to the sacrifices and the payments that you have to make in order for you to have that luxury, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Any other pieces of advice that you would share?
Yeah, this is gonna sound super cliche, but you have to trust the process. And I really, really hate saying that because it sounds like some super like yoga, like, kombucha formula, like tagline. But I think trusting the process really, really makes you realize that, number one, there's only so many things in life that you can control. And I was actually talking about this with my friend the other day. how, me and my friends are so lucky to be alive in a certain sense where, sometimes you get in your car and you're going home and you can make one wrong left turn, or you
Mhm.
could literally, you know, stop for 5 seconds too long at a stoplight and something could happen to you. And just as much as you don't have control over the tragedies in your life, you also don't have so much control over, the triumphs and the victories in your life as well
Mhm.
too. I think that when you understand the the purpose of what you're trying to do and you understand the destination of where you want to go to. So for example, for me, it wasn't so much that I told myself like, oh, I'm going to work for a soccer club one day and I was like speaking it into existence or whatever. I wasn't doing that, but
Mhm.
I always wanted my north star to be creativity and being able to relate to people and be able to communicate my thoughts and my ideas into a real life uh, tangible, product or photo, whatever it may have been. And I kept that in my north star and I kept heading towards that. And did I trust the process all the time? Absolutely not. I would probably say that I told myself you are an idiot so many times, and I still tell myself that now. I'm like, why do you do this to yourself? Like, who cares about having people think that your campaigns and ideas are cool? Like, why don't you go and make some more money? That would be really cool, um but I I have to say I deep down subconsciously in a certain place in my mind knew that that's what I wanted to do and that's what I kept going with. And I think the last piece of advice I can give is if you don't know what you want to do, like as a final destination, at least do things that are going to sharpen your skills that you can use for your final destination. So like if it's you want to be a creative, then go into marketing. Or if you want to be a chef, go work as a waiter or as a food vendor or
Mhm.
as something. And I think another thing is just the same way I made the mistake of saying, oh, I want to work for a soccer team. This must mean that I can only be a player or a coach. Like do research. Research is
Mhm.
extremely important. Do research on what positions are available in the areas that you want to work in, and go figure out the positions that you can get in. And if that position is full or it's not available, try something else to
Mhm.
make sure that you know the ins and outs of what you want to get into.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. Also, I want to add too, if you don't have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or any of that business, that's okay. And I know some people are big advocates on like, oh, you need to plan out your career. You need to like know where you want to end up. You actually don't.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about, the advice that you're giving around like, I knew that this was my North Star and I tried to do things that would keep me heading that way. That is such a better way to move through your career.
Mm.
Like it because it allows flexibility.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that when I work with clients, that's the one thing that I want to present to them is like, look, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
You might
absolutely.
think that you want to stay with this company for 5 years, but a, a year or two in, you might end up working for somebody who's basically the devil and you don't want to work for them.
Yeah.
Like, and then what? Now what? Now what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so latching on to this, like, I have to work here, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it takes away your creativity and it takes away the flexibility that you have in life to make a different choice and to take a risk.
Yeah.
And so when I work with people, I'm like, let's look at like the next position.
Right,
Like,
right,
let's
right.
not like,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
don't need to be 5 positions down the
Yeah,
lane,
yeah,
like let's just look at what's next. I mean, have the North Star, right?
yeah,
Of what you want to do, but you might take a completely outward way to get there.
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that because that likely could be the thing that sets you apart in
absolutely.
a different industry. And you would
Absolutely.
never know if you didn't take the chance.
Yeah, I
So
100% agree.
Yes. Oh, I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. That's
No, no problem.
so I would love to know, either as somebody who has managed people before or has been in a position where you have been managed by others,
Mhm.
what are some tips that you would have for people in terms of management, like style or preferences in that you've had in your career?
Wow, I think if some of my bosses heard this, they would be like, "Dude, you're being so fake." One thing that I can, oh, I mean, a couple of things that I think I can kind of speak to in that is you're never going to get to choose your bosses. It's very difficult. So I think a part of becoming a better employee or a better person in general is being able to adapt to the things that you don't want to do. And trust me, I've worked with some bosses that I absolutely despised. Like, I think they were scumbags. They were, just downright rude, condescending, you name it, all the
Mhm.
adjectives in the book. I've had experiences with some of them. And I think the thing that I didn't do well enough was to kind of use that as a like a steel sharpened steel kind of thing. I think
Mm,
I took a lot of time to kind of waste, like, I took a lot of time to despise them, to blame them, instead of really being able to like look at what I can do better and how I
mhm,
could win, even from a competitive standpoint. Like, how can I outlast this doggy doo doo so that I could, I could win. I want to be the person that gets the last laugh. Even from that competitive standpoint, I think I lost out on a lot of time for that. So I think it's always good to look at it in a learning experience. And number two is I've had a couple of opportunities where I've had really, really fortunate bosses. I have a fortunate boss at my current place right now. I think the one thing that I really learned is don't 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 lie. Don't lie because you're afraid to look bad, or don't try to hide certain things because you feel like you're not gonna, people are gonna judge you or something like
mhm,
that. Because it's gonna happen nonetheless. But when you work at a work setting, no matter how much you try to, separate yourself from work Ben to personal Ben, your personal personality is going to show because
mhm.
it's just consistency. Mathematically, you can't hide yourself every single day. It's going to come out. So you might as well just throw it out on the table and just be who you are. And of course, it doesn't mean that, cuss all the time and say all the crazy things that you want in the world, but you also don't have to lie about your shortcomings, or you could be very
Mhm.
transparent with people. And in that way, people may take more grace on you, or they may take more time to help you, or even be comfortable enough for them to share their own shortcomings with you, which you guys can kind of help each other grow in that aspect. So I think those are kind of like the management styles that I really prefer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I have had some of those toxic,
Yep.
crazy bosses
Yep.
in my career too. And I will tell you, it took me on like a downward spiral
Mm,
in that position. So I completely relate to that. And for me, because I have anxiety, and it actually took me into a depressive state
mm,
because of it, because I didn't know how to manage it.
yeah.
I didn't know, those are the skills that we don't learn. Like nobody teaches you how do you
The
deal with somebody, I mean, maybe when you're a kid, but when you're an adult and somebody is screaming at you and insulting you,
Yep.
and they're your boss, they're the one that controls whether or not you have a job and you
Yep.
need the job.
Yep.
How do you manage that? And what you're saying is dead on. You have to look at the situation. You have to almost separate yourself. Like, I kind of talk about, like, if I'm in a situation like that now, which I don't really deal with that now, but if I'm working with a client or something like that, it's like you're in this situation and you see it happening, but you almost have to have like an out of body experience
Yeah.
with it
Yep.
where you pull back and you rise above it and go, this person has no bearing on you.
Yep.
They don't really know you,
Yep.
likely. They also likely have something that they're dealing with
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
impacting them. And as soon as you can start to step back from that, that's when that learning that you're talking about can happen. And that's when empathy happens.
Yeah.
That's also when you get to a point where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And you start the process to transition out if you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But so many people, they stay in those types of positions for whatever reason, and a lot of times it's usually financially related.
Yep.
But if somebody is listening to this and resonating with what we're saying, you can get out of it. You just have to take the steps to get out, and that
Yeah.
starts with recognizing that what that person is saying is likely not true,
Yeah.
because your confidence is shattered and you don't
Right.
think that you're going to be a good employee at the next place, or that, whatever, like whatever they've said has impacted you so negatively that you don't even want to apply for something because you don't think you're going to get it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, you have to get out of that mentality first and then just put yourself out there and start applying, because the better thing for you to do in those situations is just to get out and take a position and then worry about, more of the career type position later,
Yeah.
because you're also going to have to like heal from all the trauma. So crazy. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I think a lot
No.
of people will resonate with that. I think we've all had that at some point. And so I really appreciate you sharing that.
No, not at all.
Okay. So one thing that I like to do is resource my audience.
Hmm.
And I would love to know, what is like a book that has maybe changed your perspective on your career or life, or people that you follow on social media, or just what are some things that influence you now that change your perspective on where you're headed?
Great question. I think I spent a lot of my earlier years saying self-help books and all those kind of weird like things where like, I mean, sorry, I don't even want to call it weird. Like those self-help books, and you go into like a Barnes and Nobles, and then there's like a huge section of like 10 ways how to succeed in life. And I always used to be like, dude, that is such dog doo doo. And I just never would want to give in and read it. But I think again, just having my boss that I do now, he's always encouraged growth. He's always encouraged learning and continuous learning and challenging yourself. And he's recommended me some books that really, really helped me a lot. I think Start With Why was a really, really good book. That book really made me look at like, just in totality of what we're talking about right now and what we've been talking about. I think Start With Why would help anybody really get down to the essence of why they're doing things, or it makes you even question why you are the way that you are, or why things frustrate you, why things make you happy. When you start questioning things that are going on in your life, whether that's the good or the bad, you can either step away and stop it, or you can continue to repeat it to have more success and volume. um, I think the other book that I read, and this is gonna sound again so cliche, but The
Oh,
Alchemist was
yes.
also a great book for me too. I read it while I was traveling, so it added to the allure of the book a little bit more. But I think being able to, and I'm not going to spoil the book just in case someone hasn't read it, but I think that's a lot about trusting the process and trusting the journey. And there are some times where there's a really low bearing fruit that may be right in front of you that really distracts you from something that is a higher calling or a higher position for you that you may give up. And life is very short. I mean, we're very, very mortal, we're very, very fragile, and just as fragile we are, we're also very resilient, and we're very, very tough. So I think you have to kind of navigate between those two values and principles that you feel like. You have to know that tomorrow is not guaranteed, and you could die at any given moment, as sad as that sounds. So you have to take the opportunities that are in front of you. And yet the other side is that no matter how mortal and no matter how weak you can be and how you can diminish tomorrow, you also have to look at it in the fact that there's been so many things that you thought were the worst things that are happening in your life, yet you still manage to stand and continue life and keep living. And again, I think it's just about you being able to kind of pick and choose those moments to feel mortal and feel resilient, and really use those tools as a way to navigate forward. And that book Alchemist was a pretty big catalyst for me to be able to try, not, I'm not there yet, but to try and shift my perspective to that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Again, I love how straightforward you are. This like I think that's great because I was similar to you. I was not into the self-help books. I was
Mm,
like, this is like some woo-woo weird
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm not into that.
yeah.
But when I started down the journey of that, what I realized was finding the right author with the right writing style,
Yeah,
or the most appropriate writing style for me
for sure.
was absolutely key. And now that I've read like a handful of, I guess, self-help books, whatever you want to call them. I don't know that
Mm,
I would call them self-help necessarily, but I do
yeah.
more like leadership management and stuff like that. But
Mm,
I really resonate with people who are heavy into research.
mm,
And I learned that totally makes sense with who I am, my personality type, and all of that. So
mm,
when I'm looking for an author, that is one thing that I look for now. Is
mm.
are they writing from a place of research versus a place of opinion?
Right, right, right.
And I just want to encourage people out there who might be thinking the same thing that you thought, like, oh, self-help books, like, oh yeah, whatever. Okay,
No, they
yeah.
work. They work.
They do work.
They work. Yeah.
And honestly, it's like read one. If it does not resonate with you, you have to be able to articulate why. And
Mm,
then find some, I can guarantee you there is somebody else who's doing it a different way that will resonate with you.
yeah.
Just have to find the right author.
No, absolutely.
So yeah, so appreciate that. Okay. Last question.
Hmm.
And this really relates to the work that I do. So, as you guys know, I'm a career strategist and a career coach. And one of my main tenets and the name of my coaching program is called Control Your Career.
Hmm.
So, Ben, in your career up to this point,
Hmm.
tell me about, and I feel like you've had a couple of these already, but I'll be curious
Hmm.
to see what you actually say. Tell me about a time that you feel like you took control of your career.
I think it was the first time I left the office job. Like I said, I grew up with a single mom, and it was a big decision for me because I couldn't make the decision just as an individual. I needed to make the decision entirely with like my family in
Mhm.
mind. And I thought about it in a numerous way. I thought about it in the sense of financially. I've also thought about it in a way where I couldn't explain to an adult that grew up at times where they had to walk to the library in order to check books out, right? And they didn't understand what the concept of the internet is or anything of that kind of nature. So it was really difficult to explain to my mom, like, this is my job. And she'd be like, oh, your job is to get throw parties and hire models and put out photos and drink alcohol at certain events. That's where you're going to meet people. Like, is that what you're saying? And I would say, yes, that's exactly what my job is. And I think it was really hard for her to understand that, but I think I lived with that like thought a lot,
Mm,
like, oh man, like, how am I going to explain this to this person, or how am I going to validate myself to this equation where we're continuously struggling in terms of a financial standpoint? How am
mhm.
I going to tell my mom, like, this is how much money I make? I'm an intern, I'm 24 years old, where maybe the expectation was at 24, 25, you would have been in a different position in your life. It was really difficult for me to kind of justify that, right? But you know, it was kind of like a little bit of a it was kind of like a, how do I say, more than a request. I think it was just more of like a statement for me. It was like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, and this is what I have to do, and I'm gonna do it. And even if I fail, like, I'm gonna have to try this because like this is what I think I want. And that's also
Yeah.
another part that was kind of tough because it's not like a, oh, so this is exactly what you want to do, or like, oh, this is where you're going to end up. Is this something you're going to do for the rest of your life? And all of
Mm,
those questions, and the answers to those questions was, I don't know. But I think me putting my foot down and being able to kind of articulate as to why it was important to me, that helped, and being able to do that. And I think that was the time where I said, oh, like after you do it, you're like, oh, dude, you know what? I do have some courage after all. Like,
Yes.
like, oh, I was able to do it. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, like, yeah, I'm gonna take this job. Like, I don't care what you yeah, I'm gonna make $800 a month. Who cares? Like, so it did definitely put that out there for me. And sometimes family members are the easiest to talk to, but they're also the most difficult. They're some of the most supportive people, but they're also the most pessimistic and really, really discouraging members of your tribe, which could
Yes.
really, really piss you off. But what are you gonna do? You got to live with them. So I made the conscious decision and being able to try to explain, and it was a, hey, this is my life, and I'm gonna make this decision, and I'm sorry if that
Yep.
disappoints you, but it's not like I'm gonna go out there and do some criminal activity. I'm saying that I'm gonna go work for a company and try to chase what I want. So you're
Yep.
gonna have to stick by it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, I got to tell you, I was the daughter that wanted to be a lawyer
Mhm.
and then was like, "No, I think I'm going to major in art when I go to college."
Oh
So
no.
I
Oh no.
was that child. So needless to say, I can definitely resonate with that, and
Yeah.
I think my parents would have sided with your mom on the "you're gonna what?"
Yeah. I think majority of the parents would. Maybe they're a little bit better now because they can see that, 5-year-old babies can make millions of dollars on unwrapping toys on YouTube now, but
Yeah.
maybe but yeah, parents our generation definitely weren't that open to that.
No, no,
Yeah.
but oh, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it because I know you're not the only one out there with
Oh
a
yeah.
story like that. And sometimes it is so hard, whether it's a parent or a spouse or even just your friend group,
Yep.
you get caught up in people saying, like, seriously, that's
Yep.
that's what you're doing,
Yep.
and you have to, it is courageous because you
Yep.
have to look at them and go, yeah,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing
Mhm.
and I'm happy and leave me alone.
Yep. 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 Yep.
That's awesome. Ben, thank you so much for
No,
being
not
a
at all.
guest. I have enjoyed talking to you so much and hearing your story and your journey. Where can people connect with you if they want to talk to you or learn more?
I think LinkedIn is the best censored version of myself, so I'm gonna go with that one.
All right. I'll make sure to link that into the blog post and the show notes for this episode. And once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me, and thanks for doing this. I'm sure that a lot of people that mediate or puts things together are oftentimes not as credited as they should be, and it's not an easy feat to reach out to people, to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. I'm sure to take your own time, your own resources to set things up for other people's benefits is a very, very encouraging thing. That there's still some pretty decent people around. So thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.